Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into this, well, it's a high-stakes tech race happening right now in Southeast Asian banking. It's this huge battle between the old and the new, and believe me, the very survival of some of the region's biggest financial names is literally on the line.
Okay, let's kick things off with a question, just to kind of wrap our heads around this. What if that super slick, modern banking app on your phone, the one you use for pretty much everything, what if it was secretly being powered by some ancient, creaking machinery in the background? Sounds a little sketchy, right?
Well, here's the crazy part. For the huge majority of banks in Southeast Asia, that scenario, it's not a what if at all. This number, 95%, it represents this massive, hidden vulnerability right at the heart of their financial system.
Yeah, you heard that right. Up to 95% of them are running on core technology that was built back when the internet was still in its infancy. This is the hidden crisis we're talking about. It's a ticking technological time bomb that these banks just can't afford to ignore anymore.
All right, so let's dig into this a little deeper. What does this old tech even mean? And, why is it suddenly such a massive, urgent problem for these institutions?
Okay, so at the very center of every one of these traditional banks is something called a legacy core. Now, the best way to think about it is like the bank's central nervous system. It's the fundamental mainframe-based software that's been processing every single transaction, every deposit, every withdrawal, for decades on end.
And this is where the trouble starts. See, these old systems aren't just a little outdated, they are actively holding these banks back. They're incredibly expensive to maintain, they're painfully slow to update with any new features, and they make it almost impossible to connect with modern apps. I mean, this doesn't just stifle innovation, it creates some really serious operational risks.
So, you're probably thinking, okay, if this has been a problem for years, why is it hitting a boiling point right now? Well, it's because two major forces are crashing together to create a kind of perfect storm.
The first big reason? It's us, the customers. Our demand for really smooth, seamless digital services has just absolutely exploded. I mean, just look at this chart. In only 4 years, digital banking adoption in key markets across the region just skyrocketed from about 55% to nearly 90%. That's huge.
And what that really means is that digital banking isn't some niche feature anymore. It's not a nice to have. It has become the main, dominant way that millions and millions of people interact with their bank. And those old systems, they just weren't built to handle this kind of volume or this kind of interaction. Not even close.
And that brings us to the second massive driver of change, a whole new wave of competition. You've got these new, all-digital virtual banks popping up. And the thing is, they don't have any of the old baggage. They're built from the ground up on modern, cloud-based technology. And that lets them be faster, cheaper, and way more personalized than the big old incumbents.
Okay, so let's shift gears and talk about the solution. How can these legacy banks even begin to fight back? Because they can't just flip a switch, right? So what they need is a really clear plan for building what we can call a future-proof core.
And the answer is a kind of blueprint for a new core system, and it's built on 5 key pillars. First, it's got to be real-time, processing everything instantly. Second, it has to be API first, which just means it's designed from the get-go to easily connect with other services. Then, it needs to be resilient and secure. And maybe most importantly, it has to allow for a progressive migration, a way to move off the old system gradually with lower risk. And don't get me wrong, this isn't just theory. This transition is happening as we speak. Right now, banks across the entire ASEAN region are in a full-blown race to modernize their technology.
And this table gives you a fantastic snapshot of all the action across the region. You've got Thailand and Malaysia issuing new virtual bank licenses, Vietnam, where over 95% of transactions are now digital, the Philippines adopting a cloud-first government policy. I mean, everywhere you look, new rules and new players are just hitting the accelerator on this change.
And just to give you a concrete example of this, let's zoom in on Thailand. It's a key battleground right now, where these new virtual banks are getting a massive boost from tech giants like Amazon Web Services. AWS is pouring $5 billion into local cloud infrastructure specifically to power this exact transition.
So as we start to wrap this up, what are the ultimate stakes here? What's really on the line in this high-pressure, high-cost race to modernize?
This quote from a recent industry analysis just nails it. It says, modernizing the core is no longer optional, it's now foundational. For the banks of Southeast Asia, upgrading their core tech isn't something they can put off anymore. Standing still, that's just not a viable strategy for survival. So when you boil it all down, banks in the region are facing a really clear choice, with two completely different outcomes. One path, the path of modernization, it leads to faster innovation, lower costs, and staying competitive for the long haul. But the other path, the path of delay, that leads to higher risks, costs that just keep spiraling, and well, eventually losing your customers to faster, more agile rivals.
And that leaves us with one final big question. As we look ahead to 2030, what is the financial landscape of one of the world's most dynamic regions actually going to look like? Who's going to come out on top in this race? Will it be the nimble, agile newcomers? Or will it be the old giants who somehow managed to reinvent themselves from the inside out? The race is officially on.